Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Kimberly Show. Excuse me. I am so excited to restart this. I took a personal hiatus for a couple of months, and I am back. And I am super excited to be here. And I've been going through a lot of personal hardships, and so I really connected back to why this is important to do this for myself, and more importantly for other people. And it is because I am creating a movement of inspiring people to make changes in their life, to create a movement of sharing positivity and create an inspiration for people to see that maybe there's a possibility of something different, and putting entrepreneurial leaders out there for exposure, sharing their stories. I love stories. As a memoir writing expert, I love stories, and I'm CEO and founder of $1 Million Memoirs. And so stories are so important to myself, and creating a legacy for us to leave behind something that's everlasting and that represents who we are as people. And so I want to thank all of you for being here, and super excited again for the guest that is showing today. And she's incredible. Her story is incredible, and what she is doing in her life is just amazing. And really happy that I connected with her, that she is someone who is putting herself out there. She's sharing vulnerably, and she is an author of one book, and she's currently working on a second book. And so, of course, I love like-minded people in that way, being a writer and an author. And she has a family, and there's so many other different things that I feel like I connected with her in so many different ways. And so I really wanted to have her on, and for her to share a little bit more in depth about her story and what she's overcome. I personally can't relate to the story that she's going to share. I've never experienced it. I have no idea what it's like. And so a little bit of, being forced to go into something that as a child she didn't have a say. And so now as an adult, she can share what she experienced as a child, and then she can also share what she has a vision going forward and what she's creating. And so those are what I love sharing with people and putting themselves out there. And a core value for me is that vulnerability. And so that's another reason why this is really important for me to be doing, because I really believe that vulnerability is key to building relationships, building trust, and building authenticity. And so that's what I build my company on. That's what I build myself on. And that's why I felt it was really important to come back on. And so because of what I have going on in my personal life, I am going to be stepping back to just once a month of doing this. And so it will be, to go look at the calendar, it will be the third Tuesday of every month that I'll be going live. And so you can catch us on YouTube, and you can follow me on Facebook, Kimberly Henry. You can also follow me on Instagram, therealkimberly.henry. And I'd love to connect with you all. So if you ever want to connect, reach out. And if you'd love to be on the show, then definitely connect with me. We'll make it possible, and we'll definitely get it going. And so, like I said, entrepreneur leaders who really want to put themselves out there, who want to share vulnerably their story, like come, maybe even what you're currently going through. More importantly, what are you creating going forward? What have you achieved, and what do you want to accomplish? And so I'll put that out there if anybody is interested who is an entrepreneur. And I look forward to meeting new people. I love meeting people, and I love having conversations. And this is what I love about doing this, is bringing other people on and having a conversation and really being curious. I love being curious. My entire life, I love being curious. I've always been a questioner, which, as someone raised by two alcoholic parents, they didn't appreciate the questions. And so now, as an adult, I have found a place that it fits perfectly with asking questions and listening to people, and listening in such a way that people feel like they're seen, feel like they're heard, and feel like they're done. And so I'm really excited to announce our guest, and Katherine. She will be coming on in just a moment. And there she is. Hi, Katherine.
Hi, so nice to meet you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to meet you. So we are live right now.
Oh, hello, everybody. I knew that and then I forgot.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm just settling in after getting my kids home. I'm always a little frazzled once I pick them up, but they're all good now.
I appreciate you making the time and appreciate you being here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited to have you here and to meet you in person, because I've enjoyed connecting with you and messaging, and I'm really fascinated by your story, because I have not gotten to get your book yet, and I will get it. I was reading a little bit about it, and so I'm really intrigued with your story, because I love stories. I like something like this. I really find intriguing, because it's like psychologically, I'm always fascinated by it. And
Yeah,
because you can share from being a child and your journey of going through now as an adult, I'm really, really intrigued by it.
yeah.
So
Happy to
would
dive into that.
yeah, would you like to begin with sharing what you've experienced as a child and a little bit of your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Katherine, and I grew up in a very unusual environment. Many people have heard of Scientology, generally in relation to like Tom Cruise jumping on the couch and being a little crazy. But lately, even now, with Danny Masterson's recent conviction of being found guilty for raping or for assaulting, I don't want to say those words, but found guilty though for the crimes against women. Um, more people are hearing about Scientology because Scientology did play a part in trying to and covering up and not letting those women report to the police what had happened. So that's just a little bit about like when people have heard about Scientology. My book kind of gives a real in-depth view of what it was like as a child growing up, not only part of the church, but my parents worked for the church. They were in something called the Sea Org. The Sea Org is like the inner clergy of the Church of Scientology, and it's you sign a billion-year contract, a billion years of your life. Yes. And I had signed that as well. And doing so, they had signed me up for that life. So my whole purpose as a young child, I was told, was to become a future Sea Org member for the Church of Scientology. And I had signed a billion-year contract by the time I was, many times in my childhood, it was normal to me. And I actually joined the Sea Org when I was 14 years old. So that's like a quick synopsis.
Well, I guess, how old were you then when your family was in it? Were you like a
I was
baby?
a baby. I was literally born into it. So I should have this next to me. I'm sorry I don't. I'll grab my book real quick. Apologize.
That's okay.
So this is my book, The Bad Cadet, and I've tried to make this book something that's really readable for anybody. There's so many words in Scientology that they use that people don't understand. So I try to write it in a way that's really accessible. And do you mind if I read the first page, which kind of gives the
No, I love
synopsis,
it.
the beginning of my life? Okay. Forward. A midwife delivered me in a small room in an 8-story apartment building on Hollywood Boulevard. The luminescent bright green Scientology sign outside my window reflected off the Hollywood stars that lie in the sidewalk below. I was a Sea Org baby. My parents had dedicated their lives to the Church of Scientology and to the Sea Org, and in doing so, dedicated my life as well. Instead of being raised by my parents, my brothers and sister and I were raised among a couple hundred other Sea Org children to be the future leaders of Scientology. I was a cadet, and I was going to help save the planet. If only I could follow the rules.
I love it.
Thank you.
Wow.
So yeah, that kind of gives you like the jumping start of how I'm, where I am, who I am, and then it follows me as I grow up, and obviously I keep getting into trouble. Big trouble, I would say.
Well, one question I would have is there like a bad thing to be talking about this and to be writing a book about it?
Yeah, so it was really bad, and I actually wasn't going to write it. I had been working on my journals and processing everything that had happened with me when I was in my 20s, but was always like, I can't ever publish this book because what they do in Scientology is if you speak negative, even like a Facebook post, like a very light Facebook post, you will get excommunicated and people will unfriend you, including my own parents and my sister. So my sister is still in the Sea Org as well. She's older than me by a few years. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to write this book. And then this is what happened is Scientology basically encouraged me to write this book in a way because they took away my family anyways,
Wow.
because yeah, my best friend and another good friend of mine at the time were on Leah Remini's show, The Aftermath. People may have heard
Yes.
of it. It's won like an Emmy and it's really well made. They were on the show and my parents and my sister found out and were upset that I didn't report them. Even though they're not my wife, why would I ever make them stop doing something that's their
Yeah.
right to tell a story? And from that, they cut me off and they had met my children at this point. They would still visit me. I don't live in California anymore. I'm in Minneapolis. They would come for a week at a time every year, and we would see them in California. So I was very surprised that I always hoped they wouldn't do something like that, but I had heard of other of my friends
Words.
that they had
Yeah.
been, their parents had dropped them just like that. And I was like, hopefully it's not my parents. They love me. And then they did it anyway. So then I was like, well, I'm going to write this book then.
What do you
Just
got to lose?
what do I got to lose? That was the only thing that I had to lose, and I thought I had a story to tell of all of the children who are growing up and who grew up like I did.
Wow, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
When you decided and you chose to make a shift, what did you experience? Because I'm assuming, having grown up in that kind of environment, it's very regimented. So
Mhm.
you're growing up with a certain set of beliefs. And
Yeah.
so in the moment that you wanted to create something different and you were starting to think that you wanted to be out of it, what were you experiencing like within yourself?
You know, what um I had a journey to take to figure out what was real to me, what wasn't. And then I realized and it was good. It was like I processed everything, and then writing the book really helped me process everything. So then coming into like, I have a regular life. I'm married, I have 3 kids, stay-at-home mom, happily raising 3 kids, and um, just realizing that, like, the one thing that I think has been challenging for me is, like, what is a normal home dynamic? I would say that's what has been the challenge for me. So, like, what's a normal reaction for my child at 6 years old when he's throwing a tantrum? Is this, like, a normal meltdown, or should I be, like, seeing a therapist and, like and so on? So that's been and then I have actually gone to a therapist a couple years ago, just to process everything, talk about how I mother, and make sure that I hopefully am doing everything correct. Because when I was raised, I was just treated like a little robot. Like, this is what you have to do, and there's no emotional nurturing. There's no care in that way. So I am a caring person, but I also can like not understand when my child's reacting a certain way. So it was good to just understand from a therapist's point of view and get that type of information.
Yeah, I acknowledge you because that's what I was assuming is that if you're growing up in that kind of environment as a baby going through it, then I would assume that you didn't get that emotional connection or that nurturing, that it was really just you were expected to do what you were expected to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's been a learning experience, especially as my children get older. When they were babies, it was fine because they're babies. But as they
Yeah,
become older and challenge me, and they have their own opinions, they're little people, and I'm like, oh, I have to understand that their personalities are all different. You don't treat them all the same way. Um,
yeah,
each one has their own unique
yeah,
personalities. So it's been really cool though to be able to mother in a way that I wish I had been mothered. Obviously, I make
yeah.
mistakes and sometimes I do scream and I'm like, oh man, I wish I hadn't, but I try my
I think,
best.
I think we all do as mothers from time to time.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So, what do you feel like you're finding out about yourself now that you have children that are gotten older? And like you said, they have their own personalities, and you reflect on when you were younger. What do you feel like you're most learning about yourself?
I think I'm learning that I had a lot of character or have a lot of character and strength to gone through what I went through without any nurturing and still stick to my like beliefs and like wanting to find out what was more like even though I was told you're going to be in the Sea Org, this is what you have to do. There was no dreaming of like I'm going to be a dancer, I'm going to be an astronaut or anything of that. This is your purpose and I would try to follow that because that's what I thought was the right thing. But then I would also be like, but this isn't very fun. Like, I don't have any time for myself. I don't have any, like, there was no nurturing of myself. And for me to, my book follows that journey as I finally have to make a choice of like, what's more important? Saving the world is what they say, or actually just living a life. And I chose myself. Sorry, world. I also
Congratulations to you.
I just, I knew that I wasn't the work they were giving me. I was like, this is menial tasks. I don't need to be doing this. Someone else can do this. I don't want to do this. Yeah.
So, like when you were saying the work and the tasks, like what kind of things did they expect you to do day in, day out?
So at the boarding school I was at, I was sent to a boarding school at 8 years old. And we had what was called jobs, which are called posts. And you would want one job. I was in the galley and I was cooking food for 200 kids with like,
Wow.
15 other kids, making hot dogs at the grill, things that normally 8-year-olds are not generally doing by themselves. There was like one adult, but they're kind of like walking around. They're not like next to me, supervising me. And there's an incident in the book where I actually fall on the grill and like my whole arm gets burned and I have to go to the doctor and I have second-degree burns. And then
Wow.
there's instances where we're like out on the hill, we're out in the mountains and we're, weed whacking up on the hillside to make the fire break, or we're digging holes for the apple trees. Like these were all normal things we would do during our day. So like part of the day was labor, your job, and then the other part of the day was Scientology studies and another part of the day would be regular school, which is like what everybody else would do. Um, and then from there at 14, when I entered the Sea Org, I had like adult jobs or posts. One of my first posts, it's called, was to call like Scientology public. That's what they call people who use Scientology, who no longer wanted to use it anymore. I had to call them and convince them to come back. And I was only 14, just turning 15 years old. It was like a very horrible job to have people screaming at me on the phone to leave them alone. So that was a very strange post that they gave me to start out with, which I was very unhappy on. So yeah, that's an idea of some of the.
Wow. I'm like trying to visualize it. I'm trying to get it. I'm like,
So much. And that's why I was saying, if anybody wants to know more, obviously my book, if you like to read, and then I'm going to try to have an Audible out, but I write in a way where people can be in that world. And it's not just like, here's all these facts and you're just trying to sort them in your head.
yeah,
Along with that, if anybody is not a reader, I understand if they want to know more, there's a lot of YouTube content out there right now on SPTV. I've had some interviews on there too. I understand. So people are more visual, and like Going Clear is a great documentary. Yeah, on HBO. So those are
yeah,
some access points. Because really, the point of me writing this book is to have another voice of the many voices that are coming out now talking about how Scientology is not helpful and it's harmful. It's like has a facade in front of them, trying to act like it's a religion when it's not. and they have
Yeah.
tax exempt status as well. And that all that money could be going towards the United States. Like we need that money for our communities and our schools. And instead, this big organization is just raking in all this money and paying no taxes because you have to pay for your services. It's not like a Catholic church where you can just show up and pray.
That's because I did watch the Leah Remini because I was intrigued because she brings people on there sharing the stories and people that she was in it with and like other people who have left it. So I was always intrigued by all of that. And so I
Yeah.
was surprised to learn just how much money people are expected to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And even
Yes.
stories of people who can't afford to pay that still had to figure out a way to pay it. So it was no either or conversation. It was like a must do
Yes,
for
and then they would
families.
go into debt, and they would remortgage their house or get credit card loans to go on services. It's very unethical that they did that and are
Yeah.
still doing it.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you share any of this with your kids? I thought your kids are young, but have you shared
Yeah,
any of it with your
they
kids?
know I've written a book, and then my 10-year-old has delved in more with questions, and he likes to ask me questions about things, and sometimes I give him a little bit of perspective when he's whining about something. Like I got him new shoes and he didn't want to put them on. His other shoes, the flap was coming off. And I was
Yeah.
like, it's so funny because it was literally a summer of my life when I was 10 years old and I had no shoes and I walked around barefoot all summer because my parents like weren't around and nobody really cared to check on me at the school I was at. And I
Wow.
just had no shoes. And I'm like, it's so funny that I have brand new Nike shoes for you and you don't want to wear them. And he was like, they're just not comfortable. I'm like, you haven't even tried them on. He put them on eventually. He like came home from school and he's like, guess what, mom? You're gonna be so happy. I'm like, what? He's like, I got my shoes all muddy, the old ones, so I threw them away. He's like, so I have to wear the new shoes. I'm like, I actually am happy about that.
He figured out his own solution.
Yeah, he was like, oh, I don't need to wash these shoes. My mom already wants to get rid of these.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, what would be your advice, I guess, if someone is in this situation and they're afraid to leave? Because I would assume that you had a lot of fear about leaving, considering that you took a huge risk on having absolutely nothing to do with your family, even though your family did stop talking to you. I would
Mhm.
imagine there's still a lot of fear around that.
Yeah, it's a big risk. I would say anybody who's in a situation, whether it's a relationship or in a group, where it's controlling and telling you what to think and what to do, and you're doubting it, but you don't really know if like maybe you're doubting yourself if like it's the right thing to leave because it's scary out there. I would say just take the jump. Like you gotta see what freedom's like because it's worth it, even though it's so scary. It's been amazing. I've been nothing but happy since I left the Sea Org. I mean, I've had sadness, but overall, I have a happy life. Um, and I'm doing well. I'm sad that I don't have my parents in my life, my sister, but I'm not giving up on them. I'm trying to send notes. I'm trying to do other things where it's been 6 years now, so a long time. Um, but I'm like, maybe it's up to them though. And I have to
Yeah.
be at peace with myself and know like I'm here if they want to come to me. And I understand that they think they're doing the right thing. So I don't have any anger towards them. And I'm like open and I'm loving and ready to accept them if they ever decide to leave.
And I'm
So that's
curious.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just gonna say, and that's another thing is like forgiving whoever is like if they're in a mind control group and they can't make decisions for themselves, being very patient with them and understanding is kind of
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, I love that. And
Mhm.
I am curious, do you have other family members that have been in this that like exposed your parents to it, or did your parents just find it on their own?
So I found out when I was in my 20s and I asked my mom, she actually grew up in a Pentecostal religion, which is like, wow, those are
It's
two
two
totally
totally
different
different
things,
things.
very controlling groups. So but she told me that she ran into a good high school friend of hers on the subway in New York. That's where she's from. And that friend had been reading a book called Dianetics, which is part of the whole Scientology literature. And she read it and fell in love with it, and then went on what's called course. That's when you study Scientology. And then she got pregnant with my sister and met my dad. And then they eventually joined the Sea Org. So by the time, because you could be a public, which is just taking services and paying for services, and then or you could work for the church. So my mom and my dad left their family behind and moved to California. And my mom has 6 brothers and sisters, and they were just like, "Where'd you go?" So, like, she kinda, like, didn't really talk to them that much. I saw them, like, once growing up. So even for me leaving, I didn't have, like, an extended family to fall back on. I didn't know who they were. So it's just bizarre, like, to leave everything behind like that when somebody joins a mind control group where they just cut off all ties. It's very sad.
That's something else I can't fathom. I mean, there's different reasons of why family members don't talk to each other. It's like a whole other
Mhm.
thing to just cut it off and just go
Yeah.
into like that's just a whole other kind of
Especially if
thing.
nothing was done that was wrong. Because even if, like, families disagree on religion or politics, generally, they still get together.
Yeah,
They just get irritated by each other, but they
yeah,
still have family
yeah,
dinners, and they see each other, and they
yeah,
some people try to engage in those conversations, or sometimes I say, "Hey, let's just leave that alone, and let's just be together as a family." But to not even have that option is just sad.
yeah. Wow. I think it shows exactly like who you are and your characters and your values because you're an incredibly strong, resilient woman to be able to go through all of this. And I
Yeah.
love it that you're using your voice, and I love it that you wrote the book and that you're putting it out there. It's very vulnerable and it's very strengthening to
Yeah.
see and to meet someone like you because there's so many people out there who are afraid to speak their voice and even use their voice in a sense of writing.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love those 2 words you say, like, it's so strong, but you're also so vulnerable, like, that's
Yeah,
exactly how I felt, like, I felt empowered, but I've also been vulnerable, like, "Oh my gosh, what if everybody hates my book? What if they criticize my writing?" Like, I didn't go to high school, which means I didn't go to college. I'm just an
yeah,
avid reader, and I was able to figure out how to write a story, but it's not a fancy piece of literature, we'll put it that way. But I was hoping people would be able to read my story and immerse themselves in that world and really get to understand what it's like growing up in the church, but it's
yeah,
yeah, it's been great though. The feedback has been so nice. Everybody and my friends who I grew up with have been like, "Thank you for writing this story. Like you've put us you've made what happened real because it's such a strange life." There's 2 ranches, the Pack Ranch that I grew up on and the Int Ranch, which is where David Miscavige's niece, Jenna Miscavige, was at. And
okay,
she wrote her story, which is a very, very wild story, definitely worth reading as well. Jenna Miscavige's story, and then my story is the Pack Ranch, which is like she's like the highest ranked children, and I'm the lowest ranked children. So there's 2 different stories there. Um, it's yeah, so I'm glad to add my book to the other books that are out there, and people can pick and choose and see, like, what type of story do I wanna read to learn about Scientology, and maybe you read them all, maybe you just pick 1 or 2, and I think the cool part is that the more people know about the harm Scientology is causing with families ripping them apart, about the crime they're covering up, the work trafficking they're doing, the more hopefully we can, like, take away that religious status maybe one day. And I mean, honestly, I don't know if this Scientology will last much longer than it is. Like, I think its days are numbered, but I don't know when that would be. Yeah.
right. Well, what are you creating for you now going forward in your family? Because you're working on a second book, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm working on the second book. The first book follows my childhood when I leave the Sea Org. When you leave the Sea Org, I'm still believing in Scientology, so something else had to happen where I had to leave believing in this world of Scientology and what they believe. So that story follows me in my 20s in LA, and when I meet my husband who's not a Scientologist, and the things that happen that the church does against me that's very harmful and hurtful. So that will be a darker book, I would say. This first book is very lighthearted because 'cause I'm such a child and I don't understand what's going on, and the
Yeah,
second book is me, like, I'm pulling back the onion. Uh,
yeah,
Yeah, so it's going to be exciting as I work on it and write it, and I hope to get that out in a couple years. And meanwhile, I really just focus on my family, and like I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm also working a little bit at my school that my kids go to, so it's fun to see them in the day and
That's awesome.
trips and stuff like that, and really enjoy life basically.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on and being so open and sharing so vulnerably. And I love that you shared that you didn't have a high school education, you didn't have a college education, and you still figured out a way to write a book. Because I meet so many people who instantly tell me, I don't know how to write a book. I can't write a book.
Mhm.
Like, you figured it out. You found ways of getting it done. So I acknowledge you for that. And I love that. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Yeah, I absolutely, and yeah, anyone could do anything if they put their mind to it. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
So where can people find you?
So I have a Twitter account on at the Bag Cadet and Instagram at Bag Cadet. And I do check those, and I actually have photos on the Instagram and some on Twitter of the ranch and some of the kids I grew up with. I blur their faces out of respect for privacy, but you
Yeah.
can see mine or my friends who didn't mind if I put their face on my page. So yeah, check it out if anyone's interested in learning more.
Awesome. And then I'm just curious to end it. Do you hear anything more from the church about what you're doing, or have they backed off?
I have not heard anything, so I'm relieved in that sense. I don't know if it's distance because I'm all the way in Minneapolis, not in LA. It's where their main headquarters are, or in Florida. Another thing is they have a lot going on. They got lawsuits going on with Danny Masterson. They got Leah Remini just filed a lawsuit. I am a small fish to fry. I'm not. My book sales independently. My book was independently published, so I think they are just distracted by bigger people. And amazingly, there are all these other second generation Scientologists, ex Scientologists who are all speaking out at the same time as me. It just happened to happen. So I'm not even the only one speaking out. There's like all these YouTube channels being created called on what's called SPTV. SP is suppressive person. It's what they label somebody who's bad in Scientology. So
Okay.
as
I
a
was going to
joke,
ask you before, and then I forgot. Yeah.
yeah, they named their network SPTV, and Aaron Smith Levin was kind of the starter of that. He was on Leah Remini's show too. He gets like, whoa, like 200K views sometimes. Like, he just every day he's putting out content about Scientology. So, with anybody who wants to know more, SPTV is great. Obviously, I'd like you to read my book, but I understand if you're not a reader. Like, that's a lot of people like to be more visual too. So, either way is great.
Would you message me the Amazon link for your book, and then I'll add that into the details, the description of this, so
Yeah,
people can
for
have
sure. I'll be happy to.
awesome. And then I'll add your socials too, so that people can follow you and connect with you.
Yeah, cool. And I'll send you those links to make it easy. You just copy and paste.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Yeah,
again, Catherine. Oh my gosh, I love this. Thank you. Thank you for
no,
your time, and I look forward to keep connecting with you. And
for
I'll
sure. And if you read the book, reach out and we can talk.
yeah,
If you
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye everyone.
Bye.